American President Donald Trump pushed Europe toward a decision that seemed unthinkable. Just a year ago, Europe suddenly declared that NATO as a military alliance was no longer able to ensure Europe's security, and so Europe proposed an alternative to the North Atlantic Alliance. Essentially, we're talking about creating a new military alliance that will include Ukraine but will not include the United States of America. Moreover, Europeans are ready to expel American troops from military bases all over Europe if Trump continues his threats. As it turns out, the leaders of the leading European countries have been urgently discussing Donald Trump's actions in a close circle for almost 6 months, and the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, is also participating in these discussions. During this time, it has become clear that Europe needs to build its own security without the involvement of the United States. Emmanuel Macron is the main initiator and driving force behind this adventure. And, as Politico writes, the new military alliance could be formed on the basis of that very coalition of the willing. They say it's not just about security guarantees for Ukraine, but about how to form a new security architecture for all of Europe. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, by the way, invited the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin to his new Council of Peace, which, according to the plan, is supposed to become an alternative to the United Nations. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss this together, but first please subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment below, and join my Telegram channel Pechiy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. And if by the end of the episode you find it interesting and useful, you can support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation or subscription using the links and details in the description of this video. So, as Politico writes, citing sources, the leaders of the leading European countries have been actively discussing Donald Trump's actions in a close circle for almost 6 months now. And the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, is taking part in these discussions, which indicates that the new military alliance will definitely include Ukraine. Over the past 6 months, it has become clear that Europe needs to build its security without the participation of the United States. A new military alliance may form as a coalition of the willing. And here, European officials stated that it's time to admit that Trump's America is no longer a reliable partner, either in trade or in security, and therefore they should rely only on their own strength. Next, I'll quote the politician. "There has been a shift in the politics of the United States of America, and in many ways it is permanent," said a representative of one of the European governments. "Simply waiting for things to settle isn't a solution. We must organize an orderly, coordinated transition to the new reality." That is, in Europe, they have actually decided to take the lead and start transitioning to new formats of cooperation. And it should be acknowledged that Donald Trump does not deny the logic voiced by European officials and leaders. Trump openly states that now his main concern is the Western Hemisphere. Europe should take care of its own security. For example, today Donald Trump directly stated that Europe should deal with Russia's war against Ukraine, not the issue of Greenland, like "you should give us Greenland." It's our responsibility since it's in the Western Hemisphere. Let the Europeans manage Russia's war with Ukraine. Moreover, even before Donald Trump's inauguration a year ago, let me remind you, his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, directly stated that the United States should no longer be a hegemon, should no longer be the world's policeman. And the world in general is moving towards a multipolar order. At that time, few people paid attention to this communiqué from Marco Rubio, but in it, he outlined the foreign policy of the upcoming presidency of Donald Trump. Now, throughout the year, we're seeing those statements put into action. Even then, there were signs the United States was gradually reducing, though not fully withdrawing, its presence in Europe. And now, European officials are saying that a new military format to replace NATO could become the foundation for a military alliance in an era when the United States no longer supports NATO and European security. This new format may not exclude cooperation with the United States, but it will not be taken for granted as it is today. That is, the United States may be a partner, but not a key member of the new alliance, and here, European Union officials are speaking openly. If Ukraine, which has the most capable army in Europe, joins the new alliance, then together with France, Germany, Poland, by the way, most importantly, I would say Poland, the United Kingdom, and a number of other countries. The coalition will have significant military power and will include both nuclear and non-nuclear members. So, in fact, this alliance will be absolutely self-sufficient. Because there is no army like the one in Ukraine anywhere else in Europe, especially an army that has seen combat and has combat experience. France and Britain have nuclear weapons if needed, Germany has industrial potential, and so on. In fact, this completely, by the way, also negates Vladimir Putin's demands. He is against Ukraine being in NATO. Ukraine won't join NATO but will be part of a new alliance. It is known that during the first 6 months of Trump's current presidency, European countries tried to negotiate with him based on the old principles on which transatlantic relations had been built for the past 80 years. But for several months now, many of them have been acting within an increasingly effective group without the participation of the United States. This is the very coalition of the willing, the coalition of the determined. In other words, a coalition of countries that have expressed their desire to support Ukraine, and within this coalition of the willing, which includes 35 countries, the so-called Washington Group has formed. This is a group of leaders who, together with Volodymyr Zelensky, went to Washington in August of last year and laid the foundation for the European-American-Ukrainian negotiations. This cooperation began specifically with issues concerning Ukraine, but it created very close ties between some key figures in Europe. Moreover, within this format, coordination of troops and the work of European governments with arms manufacturers, including American ones, has already been established. As stated, this Washington Group includes United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Italy's Giorgia Meloni, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, French President Macron, Finland's Alexander Stubb, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. So they all have a kind of private chat where they quickly discuss urgent issues, forming a common position in response to these escapades of Trump. And here, Politico reveals an interesting detail. All this time, Volodymyr Zelensky has also been participating in these chats. And now I'll quote, "Although the path is once again, and now for Ukraine, closed, the significance of being in the alliance under current conditions, when guarantees of military support from the United States can no longer be considered absolute, is declining. If Ukraine becomes part of the European coalition, it will be able to coordinate its defense actions with its European partners and count on their assistance." By the way, Europe is already discussing ways to strengthen defense without American involvement. A week ago, European Defense Commissioner Andrius Savchenko. Kubilius proposed creating a powerful permanent European armed force of 100,000 people and a European Security Council, which would include a number of permanent and rotating members, including the United Kingdom. We need to invest in defense so that we can fight as Europe, not as a collection of 27 national armies, Kubilius said. National armies are important, but there should also be a core alongside them. At the same time, let me remind you, a draft resolution on the country's withdrawal from NATO has been submitted to the French Parliament. In particular, the deputy from the Left Party, Clémence Guette, explained her initiative by the United States' decision to return to an overt imperial policy, in which the European Union is essentially assigned the role of a vassal. And if France goes through with this, it will be the second time in history that France leaves NATO as a response to aggression towards Greenland. European politicians have begun to discuss in private conversations such measures as ending support for the United States military presence in Europe up to regaining control over American military bases. But this means that Americans could be significantly pushed out of Europe, and that no longer serves the strategic interests of the United States of America. No matter how much Trump acts up, this could force him to soften his position, or Trump might go too far, and it could all end with a real new military alliance in Europe. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel. I would really appreciate it. You can do this by donating through the links and details in the description of this video. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Bye-bye.